Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Thursday, September the 10th. I'm Gary Stevens. Open line tomorrow. We have Wellspring following the CBS News update with Steve Kathan at the top of the hour. But for the next 25 minutes or so, we'll have a conversation with Assistant Ottawa County Prosecutor Juanita Bocanegra. She's on the other side of our Zoom connection this morning. Juanita, good morning and welcome back to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary. It's good to be back.
And it's good to be back. And Juanita will be talking as a candidate. She is running for the 58th District Court seat that is being vacated by the retiring Susan Jonas, and she'll be talking about her campaign. If you have a question about her credentials and why you think or you do not think that maybe she's the best candidate for the job, she'll be happy to take your questions at 395-1450, 395-1450. There was no primary for the judicial seat, so there was not a question of whether or not you had to cast a ballot for Juanita or anyone else on the benches. That's going to be decided on the November 3rd general election. Let me ask you this, as the campaign continues, how tough is it or how different is it in trying to get people to know who you are when you really can't go door to door? You can't do the ground game, as the politicians would say, Juanita, and you've got to do a lot of things virtually.
Well, I've never run before, Gary, so I've not been in this. I can't compare the current campaign to a previous campaign for myself. However, I have participated in other campaigns and helped with the campaigns of other judges. So yes, you are right. It looks very different this year. It has been very challenging. We have been doing a lot of Zoom meet and greets, trying to push out messages on social media. I am currently meeting with my campaign committee, trying to figure out how we're going to get the word out as best as possible over the next 8 weeks or so. Absentee ballots will be going out in roughly 2 weeks. So people could be casting their votes in the next 3 weeks or so, way before the official November 3rd date.
Now, that leads to a different type of situation. Instead of trying to focus and get a crescendo for November 3rd, you got to start, thinking that election day is maybe October 15th or October 26th instead of the 3rd because of all these absentees.
You're absolutely right. In fact, election day could be even before October. It looks like election day could officially start the end of this month. My understanding is that the absentee ballots will go out late in September. So people will have them in their homes before the end of the month. And that's why we're trying to strategize and get the word out. I'm trying to get the signs out, as many as possible. Always making myself available to meet with people for Zoom meetings. I'm happy to meet in person if we're socially distanced. We can wear masks or, depending on how close we are, trying to be respectful, but also trying to let the public know and the community know that I'm always available, even by phone, if they have any questions, or email, or, whatever method best suits their needs.
How have you been able to balance campaigning with your responsibilities in the prosecutor's office?
I have used a lot of vacation time. In fact, this year I didn't take a family vacation with the rest of my family because I was well aware that I would have to be using most of my time for campaign purposes. So that's how I've been balancing it, is trying to take either an extended lunch if I need to, or leaving the office a little bit early, as I will be doing today. A lot of the campaigning and the things that we've been doing have been happening before 8 o'clock, during lunch, or after 5, unless I happen to take an hour or two of vacation time. So a lot of teamwork from my colleagues here, which I greatly appreciate. A lot of understanding from my bosses, both Lee and Ron, and my family, more than anything, trying to balance everything out when sometimes at 9 o'clock, I'm still meeting with my team doing campaign work, and my husband takes over dinner and takes care of that. It has been challenging, but we were aware that this was going to be the case going into it. It's just different to think about it in the future versus when you're actually in the middle and in the thick of it.
395-1450, we have a question for District Court Judge candidate Juanita Bocanegra. Without getting an endorsement from Prosecutor Ron France, and whether you have it or not, that's not the point of the question. And I know you have your own campaign team, but you sometimes pick his brain as to how he was able to, or has been able to, he's retiring after this year, how he has been able to campaign at the same time execute the duties of the prosecutor's office.
To be honest, no, I did not have that conversation with Ron. He is endorsing me, by the way, but I did not have that conversation with Ron because he has been our prosecutor for so many years, and he has done such an excellent job that he really hasn't had to do much campaigning, at least since I've been in the office. I imagine that campaigning when he ran for office years ago probably looked different than now. I did have conversations with other sitting judges who were in the prosecutor's office before being elected to the bench about how to balance all of that. And the short answer is just a lot of hard work, short nights, getting up early and going to bed late, and doing a lot, getting yourself organized and reaching out to people and asking for help, which is not something that I'm terribly comfortable with, always having to say, can you help out with this? But I'm learning to do that more and more as the days go on.
395-1450, we have a question for Judicial candidate Juanita Bocanegra. Good morning. You're on the line with Juanita.
Good morning. As someone who worked with Juanita for 15 plus years at the district court, I've since retired, but I really feel that she is the best candidate for the job. And Juanita, I wish you well.
I appreciate the call. Thank you very much for the call. 395-1450, 395-1450. Well, it's not so much that particular caller, Juanita, but overall, when you've had to meet voters, meet business leaders and others, what are the top questions they've been asking you about their concerns about the position and about your candidacy? What have you had to try to answer the most?
Sure. One of the questions that comes up a lot is, do I plan on continuing with sobriety courts? It's a program that Judge Jonas started here. She is the retiring judge. In fact, that was one of the questions that Judge Jonas asked me early on was, if you prevail, do you plan on continuing with sobriety court? She feels very strongly about it. I believe it's an excellent program. And I do plan on continuing with that program if I'm elected to the position. I have seen a lot of success stories come out of it. No program is 100% successful. There's always going to be a few people who make it through the program and fail, fall off the wagon again. But that's human nature. It is an excellent program overall. The numbers back up that information. So that is a question that I'm asked a lot. I'm also asked about, do you consider yourself to be more punitive or more restorative? And I'd like to think that I would want to balance both of those things out. I believe that people deserve second chances. We have statutes that provide for that and that allow for that to be taken into consideration at time of sentencing. I believe that you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't force it to drink. So I'm all about restorative justice when the person is ready to turn their life around and make that change. I think we need to come around that individual and support that individual as a community, as a whole, not just the legal community, because it's a win-win situation. However, in those times or in those situations where the individual is not ready to make a change and he or she is happy with their life just as it is, then I think we also have an obligation to protect the community and keep the community safe.
Now, sometimes, and the one thing that whenever somebody comes up by that line, well, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Well, give them salt tablets and you can make them drink. Maybe some of the things you are doing to try to get them to, proverbially drink would be that salt tablet, some of the programs that could possibly get them involved.
Yes, I had not thought of that, but that is a great analogy. I'll have to remember that.
Yeah, just keep that in mind. But let me ask you this, though. The sobriety court, and we had a caller earlier talking about the situation involving the relaxation of marijuana rules in the state of Michigan, both medicinal and recreational marijuana. Do you see, if you are elected to the 58th District Court and continue the sobriety court that Judge Jonas started, do you see the sobriety court expanding out to become one that would involve not only those who are involved with alcohol, but also involved with marijuana?
Absolutely, because you don't necessarily need to be under the influence of alcohol to be able to participate in sobriety court. It could be under the influence of a controlled substance or under the influence of an intoxicating substance, which in this case would be marijuana. You can have an OUID operating under the influence as opposed to operating while intoxicated, which is more commonly used for alcohol.
If you got a question for Juanita Bocanegra, the Ottawa County Assistant Prosecutor who is running for the 58th District Court bench, she'll be happy to take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Common question, I think, more for the lay person than it is for those who might be involved on the inside, the insiders for those in the legal community in Ottawa County. Might be name recognition. A common voter would come up to the ballots and they take a look at all the judges' names, and sometimes they vote because, oh, it's a good Irish name, and I'll vote for the Irish candidate. Or in your case, Bocanegra. Hey, it's a Hispanic candidate. I'll vote for the Hispanic candidate. Or it's Grauman, and I'll vote for that good Dutch name and stuff like that. Name recognition is, I would think, as important as anything. Getting people to know who you are.
Sure. You are absolutely right. We chose early on not to put my last name on some of the literature out there, and certainly not on the names. Mostly because one of my campaign managers poking fun at my name said it's so long, we're going to need huge billboards, we're going to need huge signs. And we also thought that going with a first name was more personable. I don't want to be perceived as somebody who is kind of up here and individuals are down here. I want to be more on a personal level. We're equals. So we thought just going with Juanita would be good. However, I have been asked, where's your last name on this, where it's in very small print at the bottom. And I've been able to make a joke about it and say, it's not on there because I couldn't convince my husband to take my pretty last name when we got married 25 years ago. My maiden name is Flores, which means flowers. His last name is longer. It means black mouth. So I think it's uglier. I love the guy if I went from flowers to black mouth. And it's just more difficult to pronounce. I can't tell you how many times I spell that throughout the day when people call. I rarely had to spell Flores. That's more phonetic and more common than Bocanegra. So hopefully people remember Juanita, even if they can't pronounce or don't recognize the Bocanegra aspect of it.
Now, some of us who have the Latin background have no problems with that at all. I don't know whether or not this is a question that being presumptive instead of taking a look and just we'll wait to see what happens on November 3rd. But do you catch yourself thinking, all right, I'm starting to think of what I'm going to do once I become a judge? Do you do some planning that way, or you really can't afford to do that because that would be presumptive that you're going to win the election?
It's not that I can't afford to do it because it would be presumptive. It's that I really want to just keep my feet on the ground and remain humble through all of this. I've always said I have a profession that I really enjoy. I am not looking to leave something because I'm unhappy with what I'm doing. I really enjoy working with my colleagues, working with the defense bar, doing what I do. It's more I don't have the time to really start planning for that because right now it's just about, as you said earlier, trying to balance my day-to-day responsibilities, staying focused on making sure that I'm protecting, our victims' rights, that I'm protecting the community, that I'm doing a good job in my current position, and then trying to balance that with campaigning after hours and trying to balance that with family life, I really haven't thought or taken the time to plan ahead for if I prevail, what am I going to do between November and January or after January. I think I'm in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking if God allows this to happen and I do prevail after November 3rd, I'll have some time to think about what will happen in that role before I officially start in January.
That answers a little bit of a question I have in that regard, is that it's not like November 3rd, the election, and November 4th, you get sworn in as a judge. You do have a little, there would be a lead time, whoever wins the election, between November 3rd and that when they do get sworn in.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that really was the thrust of my question, was because of the fact that, you got to be able, you want to set up how you want to handle court cases and how you want certain things, who you might want as your staff, whether or not you're going to keep the same people, whether or not they want to stay, or will they be going with Judge Jonas. I mean, there's a lot of logistics questions and that needs to be answered in that regard. But again, that I don't want to make it sound presumptive, but it's reality. You got to be ready to hit the ground running when you do get sworn in.
Yes, and there is some judges training that I will have to attend as well. Some of it will happen before the first of the year if I were to prevail, and some of it happens after. That happens for every candidate. Every time that there's an election and that a judge is elected, that new judge needs to go through training. I did get a letter from the state of Michigan, and I did note that one of the trainings is focused on, for example, how to leave my prosecutor hat behind. And learn to become more neutral, as is always the goal with judges, so that you are not pro-defense and you're not pro-prosecution. You are just leaving all that behind to become a neutral party, looking at everything from a different perspective.
How tough will it be for you
I don't think it will be tough. I don't think it will be tough at all. I think that my balanced experience, speaking of both the civil experience and the criminal experience, but also speaking of the grassroots experience that I have, having started as a legal secretary, my humble beginnings, I think all of that are pluses for me that will allow me to keep a balanced perspective if I'm elected to the bench. And I also have always felt that it's important to remain humble, to keep your feet on the ground, and to always think you are not the smartest person in the room. In fact, on the contrary, we can all learn from everybody else. So I'm not worried about that.
One final thing, Juanita Bocanegra, and we'll let you go, and we appreciate you joining us on WHTC this morning. There's perception, and I don't know whether or not it's a false perception or maybe it's just I'm reading this wrong a little bit. It is seen that the district court is sort of like a clearinghouse for the circuit court. In other words, circuit court will get a case once the district court handles it on a criminal situation. Do you see it that way, that it's more of a case of I got to filter out some stuff for the circuit court? Or can you see it as, hey, I can do something in the district court level, especially in the criminal side, that can make a difference in that regard? You mentioned about the sobriety courts. That's one thing, but yet there's still a perception that it's just a step along the legal ladder as the district court.
I think it would be the latter, meaning LATTER, not LADER. I don't think that the district court is a clearinghouse for the circuit court. I think it serves an important role in the criminal judicial process with regard to preliminary examinations. But I've never perceived it as a clearinghouse. The burden of proof at a preliminary examination is different, and it's a necessary and important step in protecting everyone's constitutional rights.
Yeah, I just was saying, when you said, I'm thinking LADD too, in terms of, well, you go to the district court, then you got the circuit court, and then if you don't like that, you go to the Court of Appeals and all that. Now it's just a step, but there's perception, and some people might be asking you along those lines. Juanita Bocanegra, we want to thank you very much for joining us today on WHTC's Talk of the Town. I know we'll probably chat another time before the November 3rd election. Juanita is an Ottawa County Assistant Prosecutor and is running for the 58th District Court seat that is being vacated by the retiring Susan Jonas. Juanita, thank you very much. Look forward to talking with you again.
Thanks for your time, Gary. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Juanita Bocanegra on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.